There is a genuine interest in new Scottish music here in Scotland, and going around the world I find that interest is universal in some ways. I'm delighted that that curiosity exists, and when the BBC Scottish Symphony Orchestra, for example, who have been pioneers of new music, not just Scottish music but some of the most vibrant and experimental music from around the world, when they put on a concert like this, they attract a special kind of audience and others, and those others are people who have a genuine thirst to encounter the unknown, and that's a special kind of audience. That's exactly the kind of listener that a composer like myself and these younger composers starting out require. We need to encounter someone who is thirsty and hungry to hear music they don't yet know. And we know there's an audience like that here in Scotland. A number of these composers from Ayrshire are already building their names and their reputations as composers of note in the wider musical world. And yes, it's important that we give them a platform at the Cumnock Tryst and their music is performed there, but we also want to encourage them to go out into the world, and especially with bigger pieces, to have their work performed by the orchestras in the United Kingdom. And we have this very special relationship with the BBC Scottish Symphony Orchestra, who have been to the Cumnock Tryst. They've been a great friend of mine over the years, and it just seems a natural development that this group of young Ayrshire composers can now have their music performed in Glasgow by this great orchestra. Every young composer I work with has an impact on my music. I think that's the two-way relationship that the teacher, mentor, young composer relationship goes. You can't help but be inspired sometimes by the younger figure. I certainly am, and this group of young composers that we've brought together through the Cumnock Tryst are inspirational to me in many different ways, and I can feel my own perspective on music changing as I study their scores, as I learn their music. It all goes under the skin subliminally, and one can be affected and changed even in older age by younger figures. The curious thing about this concert, although we're calling it the School of Cumnock performance, the composers that are being featured here are all very, very different. So there's no sense of an aesthetic unity, which doesn't surprise me. It's been like that in the new music world for some decades now, that there's so many different possibilities out there as to how a musical language can go. And it's the same here in Scotland. There's a very experimental aesthetic and edge to the work of Matthew Grouse, for example, and there's a quirkiness about his music, the way he quotes and alludes to earlier music, which is very interesting. And then Scott Lygate's piece is really exploratory, and we're hearing sounds that we've never heard before. And then there's a genuine lyricism about the work of Electra Perivolaris, a real sense of emotion and a delight in the natural world that infuses Electra's music. Jay Caparrod's music is expert already. He's still only in his 30s, but his references to other styles again can be quite quirky. We hear overtones and resonances of past music, Baroque music perhaps, and very virtuosic. There's an incredible harpsichord part in it. Gillian Walker's music, again another real individual in music. She's still trying out different sounds and different ways of constructing music, new ways of writing music. And then there's a piece by an older composer, myself, probably the most old-fashioned on the programme. But I've always been keen to encourage younger composers who are not necessarily of my ilk, as it were. All this music has nothing to do with what I do in my work, but yet there's an incredible array of very different styles on offer here in this concert.